This is Hunter Greene, former Lobo, on the Talking Grammar podcast, episode 81.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Jeff Grammer with the Albuquerque Journal. As you just heard from Hunter Greene, this is episode 81 of the Talking Grammar podcast. Much appreciation for Hunter taking the time to join me in this episode. I think you're going to like his conversation. Unique perspective as local businessman, radio analyst for 10 years now of Lobo basketball, and of course, being the Lobo legend, one of the greatest players in the program's history. Finds his name still top in top 5, top 10 of all the major statistics. We talked to him a little bit about that, about some of these current Lobos are passing him right now in some of these all-time rankings. So much appreciation for Hunter's unique perspective on this Lobo basketball season and just covering the Lobos in general. I want to give a quick shout out right now to TLC Plumbing for sponsoring this episode of the Talking Grammar podcast, being presented by TLC Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, and them doing so, just like you subscribing to the Albuquerque Journal, helps us continue to bring you coverage like this, like these podcast conversations, like traveling to cover all these Lobo games. Also, high school sports, Lobo football. Sean Ryder has a fantastic piece on Bronco Mendenhall in Monday's Albuquerque Journal, online as well, abqjournal.com. So all that stuff, it's helped by people like you subscribing and viewing. If you're listening to this podcast, subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or SoundCloud, whatever you're listening, however you listen. If you're watching, subscribe to the YouTube channel that you're watching this on. So it helps us. All these episodes will then show up automatically when they come out. Helps us bring all this coverage. And the Albuquerque Journal Podcast Network is starting to roll out a few more podcasts, if you haven't already noticed. Right now, this one, as well as the high school sports one that James Yotis does, have been the two long, the two old ones now, the long-lasting ones. But got some new ones rolling out that you guys should be taking a look at and I imagine will be pretty interested in. So back to Lobo basketball Saturday. As bad a loss as there's been in the pit, really ever, one of the worst losses in the pit with all things considered. The Air Force was ranked 273 in the net rankings coming into the game. The UNM Lobos were 20th. Aside from just the gap between where the two teams were ranked, you have a Lobo team that looks like it's about to finally break a 10-year NCAA tournament drought, and they find themselves on the right side of every NCAA tournament projection coming into this game. They just came off a Wednesday night last-second win over number 22 nationally ranked Colorado State. That is 3 wins over ranked teams in the pit this season. Lobos have never beat 3 ranked teams in the same season in the pit until this year. And they've beat San Diego State, Utah State, Colorado State, which were all ranked. Things were going good for the Lobos. And then Saturday, horrible performance. They let the Air Force Falcons knock down 8 of their 11 three-pointers in the second half, including the dagger Rightus Petritus three-pointer with 7 seconds to go when JT Toppin misses a defensive assignment. Frankly, Patino said he overhelped on a play, and he did, but there was no reason to help in the first place on that. You can't leave the best player on the Falcons open and just hope to close out on him when he has a wide-open three-pointer for the win. And that's what happened. So horrible play at the end. And we get into that a little bit, Hunter and I, but for the most part, we talk about the season in general and stuff like that. The Air Force game, I will point out the good and the bad of it. One of the worst losses in pit history, may have cost or certainly made a lot more difficult the chances of the Lobos getting into the NCAA tournament. They still have 2 really big games ahead in the regular season, at Boise State, at Utah State, plus a home game against Fresno State. And then the Mountain West tournament, there's so many good teams computer metrics wise that it doesn't matter who you play in the NCAA or in the Mountain West tournament, you're going to have a good opponent, which would count as a quality win if you win it. You still got to win the games, obviously. So still a path to get into the NCAA tournament as an at-large team for the Lobos ahead. Or you could just go win the Mountain West tournament and get in automatically. That's always an option and always the hope. You try and win every game you play. So the Lobos still can get into the NCAA tournament. Saturday was bad, but it was one piece of a 31 game regular season puzzle, just one piece. And that is why Sunday, when you looked at the net rankings, the Lobos only dropped from 20th to 26th. All computer rankings, they're still in the top 35 ish. I don't think they're in the 40s in any major analytic ranking or rating that I've seen so far. So they are still in the 20s and 30s. The worst net ranking that, or the highest, or best, however you want to look at the highest net ranking that hasn't made an NCAA tournament is number 33, NC State in 2019. Did not make the NCAA tournament when they finished the season ranked 33 in the net. Right now, the Lobos are at 26. So they're still in position to be in position to make an NCAA tournament. Their seed probably won't be great now. That loss will hurt a good seeding opportunity for them. But as of right now, they're in, but they're going to have to sweat it out a little bit on Selection Sunday. My conversation with Hunter Greene not only talks about that, but also about the way the Wednesday night game ended. 7 seconds ago, Donovan Dent, coast to coast, hits a game-winning layup against Colorado State, February 21st, 2024. On the same date in 1987, February 21st, 1987, in Colorado or at Colorado State in Fort Collins in Moby Arena, Hunter Greene was there, and his good friend and teammate Kelvin Scarborough goes the length of the floor for a game-winning dunk. And we talk about that. It's pretty cool that it was even the same date, February 21st, that those two things happened. But as it was happening, Hunter kind of remembered it a little bit, and some Lobo fans certainly remembered it. Game winner at the buzzer. In that game, it was a game winner. This one, there were a couple seconds left. Last week, Donovan Dent, there were still a couple seconds left. Colorado State was able to set up a last play, and they missed it. And then the Lobos won, of course, beat a ranked team. So, good conversation with Hunter Greene. Like I said, conversations like this are brought to you by people like TLC Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, Electrical for presenting and for sponsoring this episode. But also subscribers like you. Let me know what you think about these conversations. You can always get me on social media. Used to be known as Twitter, but now X. I'm at Jeff Grammer. You can email me as well, ggrammer@abqjournal.com. But hope you enjoy this conversation I have with Hunter Greene, the Lobo legend and local businessman and radio analyst for the UNM Lobos. Here you go. First of all, thanks for coming on, man. Good to see you through Zoom. I see you at every game, but good to see you on through the computer here. How's it going?
Good. The sun came up. The sun came up.
The sun came up for a couple consecutive days. I was actually surprised as we record this on Monday, 2 days after the Air Force loss. I was a little surprised that the net rankings didn't fall as far as I thought they might fall and those kind of things. But the reality is, like, it's hard in the moment to remember this, but a body of work is, what are they now, 21-6 or 7, whatever. They've played 27, 28 games. And the season isn't just what happened Saturday afternoon. We get so caught up in the now that as bad as Saturday was, it was one piece of a 28, 29 piece puzzle right now. So maybe I should have realized that too, because I've been doing this a while and you've been doing it longer.
Yes.
For people who don't know, we've done the journal's done business profiles of you and stuff like that. Tell us real quick what you do outside of the basketball world, and then I kind of want to walk through a little history of Hunter Greene, the Lobo legend. But what do you do?
I always my line today has always been, they ask me, what do you do? I say, whatever it takes, right? I mean, so I'm in business. I'm in commercial real estate. I'm broker at SVN, Walt Arnold Commercial Brokerage, and then of course I play developer. I own a number of businesses, so I'm a little bit of everything. So, and exactly, I do what it takes to get it done. So, just a local businessman. How about that?
Local businessman. The local businessman part started though because you went to school at UNM. You would have gone to school somewhere else and done it, obviously. But what got you to UNM out of California?
Well, I was recruited by Gary Colson and came out and took a visit. But I really fell in love with Coach Colson, and his just his temperament was perfect for me. And and then of course fell in love with the people in New Mexico. Everyone thinks the pit did kind of was kind of this shiny object that kind of
Sure.
allured me, but it was really Coach Colson and then of course the community, I think.
Yeah, there's some things that can get you to a school, and there's other things that'll keep you in the community, and that's sort of what the I guess the pit. I always think of the pit. I'm lucky enough to get paid to watch games there, right, and cover games there. But I always think of the pit as a cool looking historic basketball venue. But the pit is what sort of has made this program, right? It's the fact that these fans come in, win or lose, and keep showing up. And for the past decade, there's been some lean times. And you've been sitting courtside for a lot of those. So
Yeah,
for the most part, fans are still showing up and they're allowed to have their opinions. That is
yeah,
that is how it goes. And the passion, though, a whole lot of fan bases around the country would trade in what they've got for what the Lobos got, even in the times where, I remember Larry Eustace once said of the New Mexico job, it was the hardest job. The expectations are so skewed for what they pay and this and that. And yeah, it's a tough job, but like there's a whole lot of programs that would trade what New Mexico has in terms of passion for what they have.
yeah. No, I agree. The pit is brick and mortar. It's the people, it's the fans. It's the passion that make the pit, right? I mean, it's in that, what comes with that is you get a great fan base. You get this relationship with fans. I call it, and I've lived it, right? So it's that love, and then there's that tough love, right? It's like I could tell my brother certain things, but no one else better talk bad or
Uh-huh.
say anything bad about my brother, right? That's kind of how Lobo fans are. Like we can, you know, and moan about it, but no one else better say anything bad about our Lobos, right? So that's the trade-off that comes with this type of environment, and it's a special environment. I believe I've been around a lot of venues across the country, and I think New Mexico basketball is number one in terms of the fan base and the passion that they have for Lobo basketball.
I think it's a very New Mexico thing to what you just described in terms of, I'll call my brother whatever I want to call my brother, but you say the exact same thing I just said, and we're gonna have a problem.
Exactly, right?
So
No, that's true. I mean, it's New Mexico. It's who we are. I mean, and it means a lot to us. I tell people when we got ranked 25th in the country, that just means so much. I mean, we're always 49th, 50th in a lot of things and across the country, but to be ranked in the top 25, the economic impact that it brings to this state is huge. And it makes us proud. So there's a lot of good things that come when Lobo basketball is on top and doing well.
let's before we get into this team and your courtside seat to the past decade, but really this team specifically, um, let's go back to your playing days. You 84 through 88, I believe. 1 year off. What was the injury? In the middle there, you were off a year, right?
Yeah, so 83 to 88, I sat out 85, 86.
Okay.
Yeah, tore my ankle and
Okay.
practiced. Yeah, about a week before the exhibition game in November, landed on Stoney Evans' foot in practice and tore two of the outside ligaments.
When you think about those playing days, and you guys were down there practicing on the pit floor, and you look around, you're there now, and if you're ever there at a shoot around or even pregame and looking around, the pit doesn't look a whole lot different. I know up top they did some things, but it's got to have exactly the same feel, stone kind of concrete bleacher seating around, and
Yeah, I mean, there's some things. It's funny because Coop was in town and we were talking about the difference, and really it's where the student section sits because the
yeah.
student section used to be kind of like center court, maybe about 3 or 4 rows up, and in fact probably right on the floor. I just remember scoring a basket, making a jump shot or whatever, and then going down this high five in the students, right? As we run back on defense. So I think the placement of where the students are, um, the banners aren't up there anymore, but no, it's pretty much the same. And of course, it doesn't get 18-4. It
Right.
gets, like maybe 15-4. So that's a huge difference. But the guys, the crowd that comes today they're bringing the energy, and it's still kind of has that I call pit feel to it.
The pit magic.
We call it pit game, right?
Yeah,
That's
the
what
pit
we
game.
call
Was that a
it.
pit game or not? And that's what we're always looking for. And sometimes again, sort of been some lean years. Sometimes we maybe are stretching and reaching a little bit for, you know, a B plus game that we might kind of think of as a pit game because there
Yeah.
used to be a lot of
Yeah,
A games,
that's
and it's
right.
been a while, but they're coming back. They are
Yeah.
coming back a little bit. So, those days, who were some of the highlights? I want to ask about Scar in just a minute, but who
Oh
were
yeah.
some of the teammates that you remember playing with, and some of the highlights of your
Yes.
playing days?
It's funny you say Scar because I mean he could remember everything, and I said, well, how does he remember all this stuff? And I think years after he sat and watched so many video game videos, VHS tapes, because that's what we were on,
Yeah,
because he can remember it. But no, I the guys that I remember playing with when I first came, we had senior class and then really a freshman class, Nelson France, Bill Smith, of course, Tim Garrett, Alan Delinsky, and then we had TJ Drake. He was the only junior in that group. George Scott was redshirting that year, my freshman year. So, but yeah, and of course, playing with George Scott the following year, and then played with Johnny Brown. I played with a number of different classes throughout my career. Um, I didn't finish with the guys I came with. Mike Winters, of course, Kelvin Scarborough, Larry Marklin,
because of that
those
injury.
guys. Yeah, I got injured, so I had to sit out a year. So, but yeah, no, I mean, there are a lot of great players that I played alongside with and had some great memories.
All right, I'm gonna get back to Scar in a second. Let's talk about that '88 Arizona game. I know that's the highlight in a lot of people's minds. We have a photo of it, of you standing. It's cool that we had this. But Bobby Deibler is the referee, Lute Olson, and you standing courtside, about to, I think, inbound the ball. I assume is what was about to happen there or something. And it's a pretty cool picture from that era. What do you remember of that big knocking off number one Arizona game?
Oh, it was huge. I mean, the crowd, and we talk about it to this day, some of the former teammates, we talk about like this hum, like it was so loud, there was a hum that you couldn't really hear each other speak. And then even I remember in our huddles with the coaches, and that's probably why, guys write things down on a wax board or whatever that because you couldn't communicate it verbally. I mean, so but yeah, it was just the noise and the crowd. I was sick that game. I actually had a temperature before the game. Toe Dim gave me a shot. Had to break 100 before I could play. I said, Toe, I'm playing in this game. I don't care. Give me whatever. Bring it on. And anyway, I was able to break 100, and I was able to play in that game. But I just remember Jimmy Rogers really being the star of that game for us offensively.
Yeah. The names that people will remember from NBA days across the court from you guys is crazy. I mean, Steve Kerr was there, Elliott was there, a couple other
Yeah, a
guys.
lot of guys. Yeah, so Anthony Cook, who played at my high school, Tom Tolbert, who I played against,
Yeah,
of course, California kid. Um, Sean Elliott, who became friends. We were roommates at the Olympic trials, and then of course Steve Kerr. We played against each other in high school as well. So no, it was good. It was and then we played against each other in high school, but then we'd always go home in the summer and play in these summer leagues. So
right.
it was great bragging rights when I went back in the summer to have that win. Beating Arizona because a lot of those kids were from California. So
Well, I remembered in COVID when everybody's kind of grasping at things to cover and write about. You guys did the recap of that game video wise and kind of walked
right.
through it, which was just great stuff. I wrote a story about it as well, and I heard some of the stories. Your guy, if I remember correctly, it was your guy. Who was the Herman Munster sitting courtside?
Oh yeah, so that's my mentor, Al Lewis.
There we go,
Yeah, so Al Grandpa I call him Mr. Lewis, and his
Grandpa
two
Munster.
boys, yeah, Paul Lewis and Ted Lewis came with me. They were managers on the team, and Ted happened to be my best friend in high school, so it kind of worked out.
Yeah,
So yeah, Mr. Lewis was courtside as much as he could be because he lived in New York at the time, so he would
yeah.
travel in and come,
I
make
remember
his presence felt on the court because you can hear him barking. I mean, he was always loud, and he was a very knowledgeable of the game. So,
I
and he
remember
taught me the game.
asking or talking to one of the players from Arizona, just a couple years ago. Like I said, that COVID recap we did in the journal, and one of them said he said it was such a weird experience. The whole thing. You walk down. He mentioned kind of the hum like you did. He said I remember looking courtside, and if I remember right, I think like Grandpa Munster was there. Not Herman
Yes,
Munster, Grandpa Munster, and he said
Grandpa.
if I
Yes,
remember hearing right, like I think somebody had a heart attack, but they waited up at the on the concourse kind of level to watch the end of the game and all those stories,
yeah.
the lore of that game. Some of it I realized through the years maybe grows and grows a little more than it actually was.
gets gets embellished. Well, the pig gets louder for sure.
It does,
No,
right?
yeah.
So that was the single game maybe highlight I would think in a lot of ways. I want to ask you about Scar because last week, February 21st, 2024, Donovan Dent has a coast to coast dunk or no layup rather
Yeah,
for essentially a game winner. I know there were a couple seconds left, so it wasn't a buzzer
right.
beater, but a coast to coast game winner by Donovan Dent to beat Colorado State. I was so mad when the next day an email came in from a fan saying, "Hey, that if I remember correctly, I think Scarborough did that against Colorado State too." I pull it up, and sure enough, that's the infamous, the famous um, game-winning dunk that Kelvin had. You were at that game, right? That was an
I was
'87
at
game.
that
That
game.
wasn't your
Yes,
game. Yeah,
I was the guy tackling him after he made that dunk. No, it's funny because after the game, Ned James, who was playing football at the time we played, and we were texting. He goes, "Man, that sure reminded me of Scarborough taking it coast to coast to win the game at CSU." And I almost want to say, was it to the same date,
the
like
same
February
date. Yeah, that's
21st?
what blew
Yeah,
my mind. It was February 21st, 1987.
yeah. No, that's my boy Scar. I mean, so we're in a huddle. I think we had 5 seconds left, and we knew Scar could dribble the ball, the length of most point guards with quickness can dribble 5 seconds the length of the court. So the plan was to dribble the ball to the hole, take it to the hole, and put the pressure on the officials, make
Right.
them make the call or whatever. And I think in Scar's mind was like, I'm taking this all the way to the hole. I am going to dunk it. And Pat Durham was at the rim, was one of their top players at the time, Pat Durham, and he dunked it right over Pat Durham. And man, I just like, but nothing really ever surprised me about Scar because Scar was just that guy. I mean, he was a freak of nature on the basketball court. Just had raw talent. I mean, when we worked out, he would play around like he did, But when the ball was rolled out there for game time, he was ready, and he showed up, and so that was just an amazing to me, one of the top finishes and game winners on the road that we've ever had in this history of this program that I've been a part of.
Well, that was obviously the time before social media and YouTube, but
Right,
that would have been on everything.
exactly.
Um, I'm going to use that to sort of move forward a little bit with you and Scar's name are all over these. I'm looking at the game notes now that Steve Kirkland puts together, and he has in the media guide the career leaders and all these stats and you and Scar are all over both of those. Or I mean, both of you are all over a bunch of these lists. I don't. Well, I'll ask. How many of these numbers do you remember when you hear like, oh, Hunter Greene is at this point in the career scoring list or the assists or the this or that? Do you remember some of
It's fun. It's funny because as a player, when you're playing, you don't think about, I'm trying to make, score 2,000 points for my career or anything like that. I mean, it's never been a goal. And then as you sit back and you look at the snapshot of in terms of when you played versus when the guys played before you or even after you, there's always there's a difference. Like, I mean, the three-pointer wasn't around or freshmen couldn't play or, like all those things. But the only one that stands out and everyone always asks me is like, are you still number one scorer? Are you still the leading scorer in the history of the program? I go, no, I'm dropping like a rock. I'm number 8. So, but I keep it in perspective because again, I was fortunate enough to break Willie Long's record, who only played 3 years. Again, he couldn't play
them?
freshman ball and stuff like that, and didn't have a three-pointer. And so, I mean, I look back and I really, I read about Petey Gibson and Willie Long, like that combination. It's kind of like Kelvin Scarborough and myself, right? So, and then now fast forward to today, you've got Mashburn and House. And so, no, it's just fun. It's fun, to look at numbers, and it's fun. Actually, I get a kick out of seeing these guys break my record. To be honest with you, I'm like happy to be alive. I've been here 40 years. I played what, 35 years ago. If guys are breaking my record, good things are happening, right? So,
Because you guys had some success, obviously. I'm gonna rattle off a couple of these, and I want to get into Jalen. Jalen has passed you on a couple of things. You say on
yes,
the scoring list you're dropping like a rock. You are eighth right now at 1,745 career points scored. That puts you right behind Luke Longley, a couple spots behind Ruben Douglas, who passed you through the years. Kendall Williams a little more recently is up at five, but you're right. I mean, right now, right behind you, just 6 points behind you is Rob Robbins. And now number 10 is Jamal, and Jamal Mashburn Jr. in the Air Force game, in the disappointing Air Force loss. Jamal Mashburn Jr. Actually passed a couple legends. Willie Long, who you mentioned, was number 10, and Mel Daniels was number 11. Well, now Jamal Mashburn Jr. is number 10 in the Lobos all-time scoring list, and I don't know if he catches you. But I mean, I suppose it could happen this year, and frankly, this is a whole nother podcast at some other point, but he does have a COVID year if he wants it. So, anyway, Jamal
yep,
Mashburn Jr. is now in the top 10, and you are at eight. But I'm looking at these other stats too. Career assist leader, you're at 13. Jalen House has passed you just this season in career assists, but you weren't
okay,
just a scorer, you were dishing it too. And then career free throws, you're at 13. Jalen House passed you fairly recently there as well. I see you career field goal leader, you're at number four. But this is the stat now I want to talk to you about, and it's career steals. And it's you and Scarborough again, the 1-2 punch, where you were number two all time for, well, since you played until
yeah,
recently, and Kelvin's still number one, and Jalen House, who is a fantastic steal, um, defensive on ball defensive player, a gambler a
yes,
little bit, obviously. I think we all
yes.
understand that. But right now, number one all time leader in UNM steals is Kelvin Scarborough at 235. Um, Jalen House is number two right now at 210. I don't know how many he had against the Air Force, but add that to 210 because these game notes were from before the Air Force game. But then number three, Hunter Greene at 203. So you guys are the three Lobos in history that have broken 200 career steals. What do you see in Jalen House as his ability to steal the ball? And what kind of mindset does it take to just be a guy that can steal the ball from an opponent?
I think first of all, it's the you got to have the desire. You have to have the desire to want that ball. So that's where it first starts. And then, of course, you've got to, anticipate. You got to have to kind of be a little thief. You got to, you cheat a little bit, right? But part of it too, I mean, I had long arms, whereas Kelvin Scarborough and Jalen House have quickness. And so, but again, it goes back to the desire that, if you want to get that ball, I mean, that's what you're going to get. And so I think that's where, and for me and Scar, I mean, me and Scar would compete, honestly, like, because I remember, I think Rob Portnoy, my partner, Robert Portnoy, he asked me the question, like, what is it? Well, I said, honestly, I was driven by my teammate, Kelvin Scarborough, and we pushed each other. Like, we would go out and see, not to see who could score the most points, but who can get the most steals, right?
Yeah.
And I think that was where it kind of all started for us.
Do you see similarities fast forwarding to this team in the last few years? Do you see similarities with Jalen and Scar other than quickness?
Um,
And do the Jalen on the court so passionate.
he
Scar
is.
had a lot of passion too. Could
Yeah.
probably calm it down a little bit. Probably
Yeah.
didn't go over the
You
top as
know, it's funny because I mean, I think I would have probably been more passionate. I think Scar would have been more. I think it was the kind of the coaching style and what they allowed you to do. I like the idea that Coach Pitino allows Jalen to be passionate,
yeah.
because it really reflects kind of who this fan base is. That underdog that, typically he reflects more of the population of New Mexico than I do at 6'7". I mean, Jalen House is a shorter guy. I mean, these guys are all listed at 6'2", but I mean, yeah, on a good day, right? So, but I think, they're both different. I mean, I think off the court, Scar coaches couldn't tell Scar not to be. So he was very outgoing, very, talkative, and he was like that on the court too. But I think they're both just quick, and it goes back to the desire. I look at House, and I tell you, I've not seen a player. I've been here 40 years. Again, not seen a player like that in a Lobo uniform with that much desire, that much like fight. Like he gives up his body. People don't realize, like, first of all, he's guarding 94 feet most of the time. And then he turns around on offense. He's going in amongst the trees. He's trying to score. He gets knocked on his butt. I mean, so he's given 110%. And I like that. I think the fans appreciate that about Jalen. He's very passionate about this game, and we like that, as a spectator.
I won't ask you for specific examples here, but as a broadcaster, you're a former Lobo who's invested in this program. You're in this community. You're invested in this program. In the past, what have you doing? 8, 9 years
So,
now you've been doing
so
this.
I could say what I want to say. Is that
You
what you're
can
saying?
say what you want to say, um, but
Yeah, this is
you
my 10th year. Yeah,
10th year, okay. You've seen some frustrating times, and I'm
yeah,
curious how hard it is to understand as a player. It's not worth over criticizing them. Sometimes they're going through it. Sometimes they deserve it, and that's
right,
fine. A
right,
player
right.
at this level deserves some criticism on the you step on the court, you take some of that on. But the over the top stuff, like you get frustrated as a former player seeing what, at times it's probably like, oh, that would have never happened when I played and we wouldn't have done it that way. How do you
Right.
balance that mentality with the fact that, things today are just a little different, I guess. So, how hard is that as a former player?
We're aging start to age yourselves when you start. But you know what? I start to accept the change, accept that, there's a portal, accept that coaches leave once they have a good season. I mean, you start to try to accept some of those things. It's hard for me because I am so, like, you want people to be vested and
Mhm.
be here for 4 years or whatever. So those changes I've learned to accept. Just like my kids got me going to an Android, to a out of my flip phone to
Yeah,
a state of the art phone. But
catching
yeah,
up.
you start to accept those things. I like, this team. I really like this coaching staff. I mean, we don't give them enough credit. I mean, the guys, Coach Pitino's been here, what, 34 months?
Yeah.
And he's got us competing. I mean, he's got us competing for Mountain West Conference championship. So that's exciting, and that doesn't happen overnight. It's recruitment. His assistant coaches work tirelessly trying to, get players to come to New Mexico, and then of course Patino. I mean, his style of coaching is so different from his father's. I think I really like his disposition in terms of how he is so even keel. And so to his example, he says, we don't get too high and we don't get too low. Well, here's a real opportunity of not getting too low, because that loss against Air Force was probably, you know, I'd say one of the top 5 losses in the history of this program in the pit. Because it was a gut
Good
puncher. I
punch,
mean,
yeah.
puncher, right? Yeah, it was. So, but this coach's disposition, he's not going to allow these guys to get too low, and so they'll bounce back, and they've got a lot of basketball left.
They are, I believe. I mean, at least at this point, they're still an NCAA tournament team. The seed may not be great, but I do think they're probably going to break that 10-year drought this year. To what you just said, though, not only do they have a few games left in the regular season that could help them, this Mountain West tournament doesn't matter who you play; they're all going to be quality,
That's
opponents
right.
at this point.
That's
So
right. I agree. I mean, I tell you, San Jose State, they can shoot the ball. They get hot, and you're not making shots. I mean, it could get ugly. So no, I mean, you have to take everyone serious, because it's not an easy W. And I think, that was proven Saturday afternoon.
And I will point out real quick for Air Force, not only did they beat UNM in the pit, they went and beat UNLV by
That's
32
right.
in Las Vegas, and they had Colorado State in overtime. They should have beat them at the end of regulation.
That's right.
What UNM did Saturday has happened 2 other times, one by a blowout, and then one Colorado State got to overtime luckily, and then beat them in overtime. But like
Right.
Air Force can rise to the level of what they did Saturday. But yeah, I would agree with you, and I kind of looked it up as best I could, kind of trying to put some context on where it ranks in terms of ratings, right? And
Right.
it's as bad a loss as there has been in a long time.
And I've been in some bad ones, but that was pretty bad. And I mean, I looked up after the game. I mean, the fans were just they didn't leave. They just kind of
That was
stood there, their jaws like, did this just happen?
Yeah, there was a lot
But
of fans. You're right, and I don't know. And part of it's an afternoon game, maybe, right? People weren't leaving early to go home and go to sleep or something. But like, so many fans just kind of stood there after it was
yeah,
over for a while.
it
Like,
was a shock. It was.
so Hunter, look, man, I appreciate you doing this. I'm curious. What are your thoughts on the rest of this season and this team? Do you think they're going to be in the NCAA tournament?
Because the era I played in, it was so subjective. And now with all these different matrix and all the net and the pin palm and the there's so much data there. And I listen to guys like you to
Yeah,
help me cipher through all that because I don't, check the net every week. So,
yeah,
um, you know, I, I I always say don't leave it in the hands of the committee or those people, that have all the analytics because um, you never know. And I thought when I played, I bet probably 2 of the 4 years we probably should have been, right? We should have been in the tournament, but we controlled our own destiny. We lost in the tournament championship, I think twice, and that's why we didn't make it. But I don't put it on the committee. I don't blame anyone because we controlled our own destiny and we didn't take advantage of it. So I'm telling the Lobos today, do not let that committee or do not let those people that keep the analytics um, make those decisions for you. Go out and take care of it because you still have time. It's not the end of the world. They've got 3 more games now, albeit 2 of them on the road are tough, but they're doable. I mean,
yeah.
we just saw what Air Force did to the, Lobos in the pit, so they're doable. Um, you know, so just keep your head up and continue to play and push forward, and good things will happen. I believe for them.
You having fun doing this?
It's funny you asked that question. This is the first winning season in 10 years. I mean, when Rob and I travel, when we lose, we swim in the same misery,
Yeah.
and it's not easy. And but so to answer your question, I am having a blast.
I will say the vibe after games and around the program is absolutely different when they're having a good season like this, right?
Yes,
Oh,
it's funny how winning cures all, right? I mean, it does. And so, like I said, I think this Coach Patino, and his staff, and I rarely talk to him. We don't interact much, but I've watched carefully how this coaching staff has handled this program and couldn't be any prouder.
awesome. Hunter Greene, I appreciate you for having this conversation and doing this podcast and a few more weeks of basketball ahead. Hopefully it'll be maybe a month or so of basketball ahead, right?
That's right. Just keep it up. We enjoy it. We like fun.
Appreciate it, man.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right, well, there you go. A conversation with Hunter Greene, the Lobo legend, the radio analyst, local businessman. All the hats Hunter wears. Much appreciated that he was able to wear the hat of a Talking Grammar podcast guest today. So, episode 81 is in the books. Much thanks to Hunter for coming on the show and giving his unique perspective to Lobo basketball as a former player and the radio analyst for their broadcasts. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you enjoy all these broadcasts, all these podcasts that the Albuquerque Journal Podcast Network is starting to bring you. Check out our work though, abqjournal.com every day. We're bringing you news, politics, business, entertainment industry news, which is huge in New Mexico, obviously, and sports, of course, high school sports, football, basketball, all this stuff. Check it out, abqjournal.com/subscribe if you want to help support local journalism to continue bringing you all this coverage. And if you're listening, if you're watching, subscribe. Hit that subscription button on Apple Podcast. Hit that Spotify subscribe button. These podcasts will automatically upload into your feed if you do so. Um, Again, TLC Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, Electrical. Thank you for sponsoring this podcast. Let me know what you think about this episode and future episode ideas. Give me your thoughts. Until next time, thanks for listening.